My name's Paul Woodman. I'm part of the team here at City Life. They asked me just to speak for a few minutes just about healing. And so I thought we could just take a look at one page of the Bible, which talks about Jesus healing a man. And so this person had nothing to lose and everything to gain. So blind Bartimaeus receives his sight. This is the story in the page of Mark's Gospel, chapter 10. It says, "Then they came to Jericho, and as Jesus and his disciples, together with a large crowd, were leaving the city, a blind man, Bartimaeus, which means son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside begging. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, 'Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me.' Many rebuked him and told him to be quiet, but he shouted all the more, 'Son of David, have mercy on me.' Jesus stopped and said, 'Call him.' So they called to the blind man, 'Cheer up, on your feet, he's calling you.' Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. 'What do you want me to do for you?' Jesus asked him. And the blind man said, 'Rabbi,' which means teacher, 'I want to see.' And Jesus said, 'Go, your faith has healed you.' Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road." So it's a great story. It's just a few verses in the Bible. What do we know about Bartimaeus? He was blind and most likely grew up blind. So he never saw his mother smiling down on him when he was born. He tripped and fell over everything as he grew up as a child. He had to learn to walk in darkness. And then he grew up, and somehow or other, he is not with his family now, is he? So the other thing we know about Bartimaeus is he's begging. So he's trying to make his way in life. So somewhere the son of Timaeus has lost his Timaeus, whose parents may have died, or they may just not have had the money to look after him. So he's on his own. Every day he's out begging. Every day he's wandering through the darkness, avoiding all the pit holes in the desert roads and trying to find his way through life. What he is good at, though, is listening and hearing what's going on. And you see, when you read Mark's Gospel, you see that a couple of chapters earlier, a man born blind had been healed by Jesus. And no doubt, I think when you read the story, Bartimaeus may have heard that story. If he didn't hear that story, he heard another story about how Jesus had healed someone who was deaf, or someone that was mute, or someone who couldn't walk. And so he heard all these stories. And so that was the man, Bartimaeus. That's what we know about him. The second thing we get in this story, the second bit of the story is this. He had an opportunity, didn't he? He was sitting there begging for money, trying to make his way through the day. And then suddenly he gathered with his ears, that are better than our ears probably, that Jesus was coming his way. Now normally, and he also worked out, there was a large crowd, there was lots of people. And if large crowd means money. It means, doesn't it, if there's a large crowd coming, this is your great chance to really do your begging well and to get the money you need. So he had two opportunities, in fact, didn't he, Bartimaeus? He had one, he knew Jesus was coming and he'd heard stories about Jesus. The second thing he had an opportunity for was money. He could have gone for the cash, but he didn't. He went for Jesus. So instead of taking the opportunity to try and get a golden ticket day for his begging, he decided to try his luck on Jesus. And he took a punt, and it was an opportunity. And he was clever, wasn't he, to think, this is my one opportunity to see this Jesus who heals people. And so he says these words, "Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me." And people are telling him to shut up, go away. But he keeps going, he shouts all the louder. And he takes his opportunity to meet this Jesus and then Jesus stopped. Which is an amazing thing, isn't it? The thing that Jesus stood still and connected with this person, Bartimaeus. And so in this moment, man to man, with the crowd watching, Jesus calls him over, and they're like, "Oh, this could be your lucky day, Bartimaeus. Cheer up." And so this is the scene. Imagine this. The blind man in the side of the road, he throws his cloak aside. He jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. This was it. He was all in. This is his one chance to meet with Jesus face to face. And so he went for it, just based on the stories he'd heard. He'd never seen any of these things. He'd only ever heard the stories, but he went for it 100%. He took a chance, but he had nothing to lose, did he? What did he have to lose? Nothing here. And then Jesus says to him these words, which are worth us thinking about today for ourselves. Jesus said to him, "What do you want me to do for you?" And he stood there with the blind man staring back at him, not seeing anything. But the blind man says, "I want to see." And so as we come here today, we believe that Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, that he is, as he was in this page of the Bible, that he is here today. And he says to each one of us, "What is it that you want me to do for you?" And we believe he's alive and with us. And that's why so many people put up their hands earlier, because we believe it's true. And so he says, "I want to see." And Jesus healed him. So he said, "Go, your faith has healed you." And immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. Amazingly, the next few days of Jesus' life would have been the crucifixion, the resurrection, the Easter story. And Bartimaeus would have seen all of this with his own eyes. He wouldn't have left Jesus, would he? His life's just been turned around. Where else is he going to go? He's got no family to go back to. It is not going to go back to begging on the side of the road. So he just hangs around Jesus over these next 6 chapters of the Bible and sees the event of Easter unfold with his own eyes, and he watches it. This man Jesus, who healed him, die for him, rise again, and come back to new life, and would be part of this new church in Jerusalem. So there's the story. There's 2 things we can take away from this for ourselves. One is, what is it that we've come here tonight for? Are we willing to take that punt, to jump up, throw off the cloak, and say, "Here I am, Jesus. I'm risking it all for you. I just want to present myself to you, and I trust that you will do good to me." And the second is that question that Jesus asked, "What do you want me to do for you?" That could we bring ourselves in our vulnerability like blind Bartimaeus did and say, "Yes, I want to see. This is what I want in my heart's desire. This is what I want from you." And most importantly here is this relationship with God started, didn't it, with Bartimaeus on that day. He would have clung to the feet of Jesus after that to follow him, go his way. So there's the little talk. Sometimes we think, well, these are things that happened thousands of years ago, and how do we know it's true? I have met a blind person who was healed. And so it was in Macedonia. It wasn't while I was there. It was a few weeks before. But she was completely blind from birth. And she was prayed for, and she could see again. Now, you might think, well, you've just been told, you've just been hoodwinked. Anyone could say things like that. But I knew it was true because the whole village, like hundreds of them, they all believed in God. They all believed in Jesus. And when you ask them why, it's because she couldn't see. And now she can. I believe in Jesus. And so when you've got that powerful thing that happens, you can imagine blind Bartimaeus isn't going to stop telling his friend about it. So hopefully today you can come just knowing that Jesus is good to you. You can trust him. And that whatever it is you want him to do for you, he will do for you because he loves you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. That's powerful, that story. And like Bartimaeus, who would have heard what Jesus was doing in the community and would have heard that people were being healed and had his courage up and his faith to say, stop. We're going to just take an opportunity now. And I've asked 2 people just to share their stories of healing and what's happened to them. These are people that we know and love as part of this church community. So I'm just going to invite up Vix and Tracy, who, have some stories to share. Yeah, do give them a big round of applause. It does take courage. You're going to go first.
I feel really nervous, so I'll just get it over and done with. I don't quite know why I feel nervous, because I realise that a lot of people here know this story already, but I'll go for it anyway. So my story is one of God's goodness from the very beginning of it. I'll start when I was about 25. I won't be very long, I promise. But it's not only a story of God's goodness from the very beginning, but it's also, I think, a story of your perseverance. And my church family has been so faithful and had so much hope and persevered in prayer for me and my family. So, when I was 26, I fell pregnant quite miraculously, as I was told that would never happen for me, naturally. And I fell pregnant naturally. And just 6 months before that, Andy, my husband, had been diagnosed with epilepsy, which was not being controlled at the time. It was pretty horrific, as you can imagine. And it was a very, very hard time. And about 12 weeks into my pregnancy, I started having seizures also, which was fairly unbelievable, but apparently, that can happen. So I was 12 weeks pregnant, and I was in hospital for a week or so, and they found that I had a brain tumor. And not only that I had a brain tumor, they had a real good look at it, and they said, this is a brain tumor that you're not going to live through this. And if you don't terminate your pregnancy, you will definitely not live to see your baby born. It won't happen. And obviously that was horrific. But what happened really was the response from the church was we just all got down on our knees. I mean, I didn't really get down on my knees. I probably just wept my way through this whole thing. But everyone just got down on their knees and they prayed and prayed. And a second appointment with the doctor, they said, well, we're just going to do another scan, just, make sure that we've got this grading right. It's boring, but... So they did another scan, and they met with me a few days later, and they said, we don't understand, but we thought your tumor was a high-grade, very aggressive tumor, and actually we were wrong. It's a low-grade tumor, which is we can't cure it, but you're definitely going to be able to have your baby. So I had my baby, which was amazing. And shortly after that, I had a surgery, and then I had another baby, which was awesome. And then I had another surgery because my tumor had come back. And after that surgery, they said, actually, your tumor has become really aggressive. It's become a high-grade tumor, and we're going to need to do a lot of intervention, and we're going to need to do a lot of chemo. And the odds at this point just don't look good for me. So I had my radiotherapy, and I had I didn't have any chemotherapy at that point. We prayed and prayed, and God really just took me on an amazing journey and showed me his goodness, and took me from believing that God could do it to God might actually do this. God actually wants me to be whole and healed and well. And the scan that I had following my radiotherapy, you expect to see... So I had one initially and then another one a few months later. You expect to see a good scan at the beginning because everything's been blasted, and then you expect to see it getting worse. And I went and I spoke to the consultant who said, what's a funny thing? It's a funny thing, because we looked at your scan, and actually we can't see any trace of your tumor at all on your scan, even though it's months later and it's supposed to be growing back by now. And so actually I really believe that where I've been praying and declaring, you guys have been so perseverant in believing and praying and declaring for me, that God has really done a healing thing for me. And I've just had another scan, a 6-month scan after that, and I'm getting my results soon. So I still need prayer, and then my journey's not over. But I'm just really trusting God that the promise that he's got over my life is going to be seen in the land of the living, So yeah, that's my story. Thank you.